That's Thursday in the wood shop. I'm just working away at these mating nukes. This takes a few days because each glue up takes 8 clamps. I don't have 80 clamps. So I'm just declamping the last batch and clamping up a next batch. It looks like I'm going to be 1 box short of finishing here. That's fine. So I just thought I'd show you kind of what I'm doing. I often, not always, but often build my equipment from new lumber. I happen to have all of the 3/8 plywood that I needed for the internals of these mating nukes in my scrap pile. Some of it doesn't look very great. It's been sitting outside a long time, but it'll work just fine. That side's not as bad. So what we've got here is a box that started life as a 10 frame deep. I cut it down on my table saw to a depth of a medium box plus 3/4 of an inch. I'm using medium frames in these, so I wanted a medium kind of overall, but I also didn't want to have to build a complex bottom board, so I added 3/4 of an inch just to the depth of the box, and that'll suffice for the bottom board shim. My bottom board then will consist of simply probably a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood cut to size on the bottom. So here I've routed grooves in the sides, all 4 sides in the center, 3/8 grooves. I've driven 3/8 plywood in here as a divider. I've got these plywood pieces that go in here as dividers. Okay, this is my frame rest here. Then these smaller 3/8 plywood pieces glue in here. And you can see they're a little bit shorter here. So this is a frame rest, and this is a frame rest. I made myself some nifty little frames. This is about a 1/2 width of a standard medium depth frame. Milled the ends myself to go together. And so these will fit right in here. So we'll have 5 frames in each section. I've got extra space here because I've actually gone and cut these down to 1.25 inches. Standard frames are 1 3/8 wide, then 1/8 of an inch narrower, 1/16 on each side. And that will give me management space in here. 5 frames in half a box is pretty tight, 3/16 of an inch. In fact, and this is kind of a bit of trivia you should look up online. It's pretty interesting to see the differences in spacing of frames. There's been a lot written about it over the last 150 years or so. Bush actually has an article on his website that cites the different information about spacing. When I talk spacing, I'm talking center to center, right? So center to center, so basically you're talking from here to here, space, that width. I mean, you could take that width anywhere and it'll be the same space. So it's pretty interesting, and we all know that most times when we do a honey box, we'll space our frames out. You know, we'll space our frames out a bit, and the bees will build that comb out nicely, and that makes it easy to uncap and all that kind of stuff. These aren't honey boxes. These are very small brood boxes. And the difference in spacing affects what the bees will do with that comb. And 1 3/8 is kind of a compromise between a brood box and a honey box. It works well for both. But interestingly enough, the smaller the spacing gets, the smaller the cell size gets. And this article kind of was written from the idea of small cell bees and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not an advocate of all that. However, it is interesting that the principle applies that the bees will build smaller cells as the frames are closer. And where this applies here is that at 1.25 inches wide, the bees will not likely build a drone cell in that tight a space. Okay, if all this theory is proven wrong, I can always space my frames out a little bit. I can't push them closer together, but I can space them out if I need to. So I found that interesting. I'm getting some black medium right cell that I'm going to put in these frames. When it arrives, I'll cut the sheets in two and insert them into these frames. Then I'll have those frames drawn out, and hopefully these will be ready for mating my queens this year. The tricky timing is actually getting these drawn by the time I put a queen cell in there. Today's important task is to get the warming cabinet here loaded and running. I haven't packed honey in a little while. Winter's always a bit slow. So here I just started this thing up. I've got another video that details how this thing works and how it's built. But just to suffice it to say, I've got a master switch here with a pilot light. That just tells me that it's on. And this is my controller. This is a pretty common controller for industrial equipment. I feel that it's very reliable. The display here shows 16 degrees. This is all in Celsius. The building here runs between 13 to 15 degrees. And this has been running for a minute or so, so it's starting to warm up. If I look at the menus here, I can see that I have this set to turn off at 47 degrees Celsius. When you say, well, that's a bit high, and it is a bit high, you're right. The honey never reaches 47 degrees Celsius. I just find that if I were to set the cabinet, and I know this by experience, to a temperature like 30 or 35 degrees, which is the upper limit of where I want my honey warmed, it doesn't complete the liquefaction process properly. However, if I set it up higher, 47, and I'll tell you why I chose 47, then it does finish the liquefaction process, and tests of the honey itself show that the honey is still no hotter than 35 degrees Celsius. 47 degrees is the upper limit of the organic standard for handling honey. Not that my honey is certified organic or anything, but there's so little information out there about how warm you can make honey that I have to use what I can get. And an organic standard says 47 is the hottest that you can warm honey. So I chose 47. But again, the honey never reaches higher than about 35 in this cabinet. So I'm going to open this up and show you what I have here. This is just simple 5/8 plywood construction with an inch of polystyrene on the outside. So this was specifically designed to hold a capacity of 12 5-gallon pails. I only have 9. Again, my packer only wants 9 right now. So the whole idea here is to get a system where I don't need to lift pails. I don't need to lift honey. When I count up the number of pounds of honey that I lift in a year, it's in the hundreds of thousands. So every step that you can eliminate for lifting honey is worthwhile. And so this, I can easily load this by hand, which I did, but it's sized so that I can set that pallet in here with my tractor. You can't actually see the pallet here. There's a pallet down here. So I can set that pallet in here with my tractor, and then I can set another pallet on top of the first layer of pails with my tractor. So that means the tractor's doing the lifting and I'm not. It's a little bit of a tight squeeze. I've done it a few times, so it's not that hard. But today I'm just going to leave it as is, and these are going to warm. It takes days to warm this. I'm going to check back on this in probably 5 days. This is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'll either check it Monday or Tuesday and see how it's going. I temperature test the honey, make sure the honey's not getting too hot, and then when it's warm enough, this honey was never strained out of the extractor. It was settled in a sump, but that's all. So it still has quite a bit of float on the top. So this has to be warmed enough that I can strain it and then take it off to the packer. So that's really all this is. Down below here, below the whole contraption, is the heater box. You can see some light there. There's 4 light bulbs down there, 150 watts each. Incandescent, of course. You know, CFLs and LEDs won't give you the heat. And plus there's 2 fans. The fans are ducted up over here at the sides, each side. And then, I'll lift you up again. And then it goes down here at the top, at the back. So the air should come up through here like this and continue to circulate. In my experience, I've used this a few times already. It does an excellent job. Temperature sensor is here in the middle, so it gets a good cross section of kind of the hottest point, theoretically, is up here at the top. The craftsmanship is a bit rough. I again used some discount and reclaimed lumber, but it you know, it sure does the job. It works really well. Very happy with it. It's not even well sealed because it doesn't pump air into it, so there's not really a leakage problem. See, this door doesn't even fit right. A couple little draw catches is all I need to keep it all closed up tight. So that's the warming cabinet. That was the big job for today. I didn't take a day off this weekend, so I was supposed to take today off. It's not going to happen though. I've been building meeting nukes already, and I need to spend some time getting ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow and Saturday. Friday, Saturday is the Manitoba Beekeeper Association convention. I'm on the board, so I'm expected to be there, and I'm videoing some of the presentations as well. And I shouldn't say I'm expected to be there. I'd be there anyway. It's a good show. It's a good time. Interesting speakers. AGM is good to be in on. They have a nice banquet Friday night. Good for networking. Nice meal. We're going to leave it at that. I'm not sure what else I'll get into today other than my convention preparations. We'll leave this thing to do its job. She's 18 degrees already. This little pilot tells me when the heater is on. The fans run non-stop. The fans will run 100% of the time to keep the air circulating. I want to mitigate hot and cold spots in there. And then the light bulbs will turn on and off with the controller. So 18 degrees, that'll be up to temperature. It'll take a while. It'll take 24 hours to come right up to temperature. And then the honey will follow suit, and we'll be able to strain that early next week. Something I want to show you here that I didn't tell you about the warming cabinet. I have a little temperature sensor in there, and it's connected to my Accurite weather station system. So this is the outdoor weather station. If I scroll down here, there's different things here, and one of them is warming cabinet. So you can see the temperature has been pretty much room temperature here all along until here. We're looking at 20 degrees. I just now put it in there, so it hasn't realized that it's actually 45 degrees in there now. It's warmed up a lot faster than I had expected. So that's really nice. This is available on a mobile app, so I can watch this when I'm away from home and see if my warming cabinet is gone off the rails or not. So here we go. Okay, this graph says, so this is just the graph of the warming cabinet over the last, well, since midnight last night, and it shows right now 30 degrees in there. It's spiking up since I put that in there. Very nice to be able to monitor this from away from home. Helps me be confident that my honey isn't overheating. I had an Inkbird controller previous to this, and it was very unreliable. It would overheat, and I did spoil some honey because of it, so that honey didn't get to market. It went for other purposes. So I thought I'd mention that. It's kind of a neat little thing.